There was a time in my life when everything looked fine from the outside. It even looked successful: a stable job, a steady income, nice clothes, a clean apartment. Nothing seemed wrong. And yet, something felt off, not loudly, not clearly, just a quiet feeling that something was not right. In my 30s, I believed I understood money. I believed I was doing well because I was earning more than I ever had before. And for a while, that felt like enough. More income meant more freedom, or at least that's what I thought. So I started to live differently, not dramatically, just a little more comfortable. Better food, better clothes, better experiences, things I told myself I finally deserved. And maybe some of that was true, but slowly, without noticing, something else was growing. Not wealth, not security, but pressure, quiet pressure, hidden behind normal life. At first, it was easy to ignore: a small credit card payment, nothing serious, just something to handle later. Then another one, and another, still manageable, still under control. At least, that's what I told myself, because nothing was urgent, nothing was breaking. Everything continued, as usual. Days passed, work continued, money came in, money went out. And in between, I stopped paying attention, not completely, just enough to miss what was really happening. There is a strange thing about slow problems. They don't feel dangerous, they don't demand attention, they don't create fear right away. They grow quietly, and because they are quiet, they are easy to ignore. That's exactly what happened. The first mistake did not feel like a mistake. It felt normal, it felt common, it felt acceptable. Using money that I did not actually have. Not because I needed it, but because it was easy, because it was available, because everyone around me seemed to be doing the same. Swipe a card, pay later. Simple, convenient, harmless. At least, in the beginning, I remember one specific moment, standing in a store, holding something I didn't truly need, but I wanted it. Not strongly, just enough. There was a quiet thought: you can afford this. But that thought was not completely true. What it really meant was, you can delay the cost. And that difference seemed small at the time, but it wasn't. Because when you delay something, you don't remove it. You just move it into the future. And the future eventually arrives. At first, the numbers were small, easy to ignore, easy to manage, but slowly, they began to grow, not in one big moment, but in many small ones. Dinner here, shopping there, a trip, a gift, a reward for working hard. Each one felt reasonable, each one felt justified, and that is how the first mistake works. It doesn't look like a mistake. It looks like life, normal life, until one day you stop and actually look, really look, at the total, at the full picture. And for the first time, there is silence. Not calm silence, but heavy silence, because the number is no longer small and the feeling is no longer comfortable. That was the moment. Everything started to change, not immediately, not dramatically, but quietly, because awareness always comes first. And once you see something clearly, you cannot unsee it. That was only the beginning, because this was not the only mistake. There were others, some louder, some more painful, and each one taught something important. But at the time, they did not feel like lessons. They felt like consequences, slow, unavoidable, and very real. That heavy silence did not disappear quickly. It stayed quiet, but present. And for the first time, I started to look closer, not just at the numbers, but at my behavior, at the way I was thinking, at the way I was making decisions. The first mistake was no longer hidden, it was clear. Using money I didn't have had slowly created a weight, a quiet pressure that followed me everywhere. But instead of stopping, I made another mistake, a different kind, one that felt smarter, on more exciting, more hopeful investing. At that time, everyone around me was talking about it. Friends, colleagues, people online, stories of fast success, easy money, opportunities that could not be missed. And slowly, a new thought appeared. Maybe this is the way out, not just to fix the problem, but to move forward, to grow faster, to catch up. Because deep down, there was already a feeling that I was behind, that I needed to do more. So I started listening, watching videos, reading articles, following opinions. But there was a problem. I wasn't really learning. I was searching for confirmation, for something that sounded right, something that felt easy, something that promised results without too much effort. And I found it. Or at least, I thought I did. A popular trend. And everyone was talking about it. Everyone seemed confident. The energy was strong, positive, almost convincing enough to remove all doubt. And that's when the second mistake happened. I followed the crowd, not because I understood, but because I didn't want to miss out. That feeling is very powerful. The fear of missing something, the fear of being left behind, the fear that others are moving forward while you stay in the same place. So I made a decision, quickly, without enough understanding, without real patience, just trust, not in knowledge, but in noise, in excitement, in other people's confidence. At first, it felt good, very good. Watching numbers move, seeing small gains, feeling like progress was happening. That feeling is dangerous because it creates illusion. On the illusion that everything is working, that the decision was right, that the future is already improving. But reality is often slower and quieter and less forgiving, because what goes up quickly can also come down quickly. And when it does not ask for permission. It just happens. I remember the moment clearly, looking at the screen, waiting, hoping, telling myself, it will go back up. But it didn't. Not that day. Not the next day. Not even after that. And slowly, the feeling changed. Excitement became worry. Worry became tension. Tension became regret. But still, I didn't stop. Because stopping would mean accepting the mistake. And that was difficult. So instead, I waited longer, hoped more, listened to more noise, looking for reassurance, looking for something to tell me I was still right. But deep down, there was already a quiet truth. I didn't understand what I was doing. And when you don't understand something, you are not in control. You are just reacting, following, hoping. And hope is not a strategy. Eventually, the result became clear. The loss was real, not just money, but confidence, trust, clarity. That second mistake hurt more than the first, because this time, I believed I was being smart. I believed I was improving. But in reality, I was just moving faster, in the wrong direction. And there were still more mistakes, waiting, quieter ones, more personal ones, the kind that are harder to see but even harder to fix. After that loss, something inside me became quieter, not peaceful, just quieter, less confident, less certain, more careful, but not necessarily wiser. Because understanding takes time, and mistakes don't always teach immediately. Life continued. Work, daily routines, conversations, everything looked the same. But inside, there was a subtle shift, a need to feel in control again, to feel stable, to feel respected. And that is where the third mistake began. It didn't start with money. It started with feeling, a quiet desire to prove something, not to others directly, but to myself, that I was doing well, that I was not behind, that I was still successful. And sometimes the easiest way to create that feeling is through what we show, not what we build. Better clothes, better places, better experiences, things that look good, things that feel good in the moment. I told myself, it's okay. I work hard. I deserve this. And maybe part of that was true, but there was another truth hidden underneath. I wasn't buying things because I needed them. I was buying them because of how they made me feel. For a short moment, they created a sense of worth, a sense of progress, a sense of identity. But that feeling never lasted. It faded quickly, and when it disappeared, it left something behind, a quiet emptiness and a growing cost. This kind of spending is difficult to notice because it feels emotional, personal, even meaningful. But over time, it becomes a pattern, a cycle. Feel something, buy something, feel better, then repeat. And every time, the cost grows, not just financially, but mentally. Because the gap between reality and appearance becomes larger. I remember a moment, late at night, sitting alone, looking around, nice things everywhere, but no real sense of peace, no real sense of progress, just quiet discomfort. Because deep down, I knew something. These things were not solving anything. They were only covering something. And what they were covering was uncertainty, doubt, fear of not being enough. That realization was uncomfortable, but also important because for the first time, I wasn't just looking at money. I was looking at the reason behind the spending. And that changes everything because when you understand the reason, you can begin to change the behavior slowly, not immediately, but step by step. That was the beginning of a different kind of awareness, more honest, more direct, less comfortable, but more real. And still, there were more lessons waiting, quieter ones, less obvious, but just as powerful, because not all mistakes are about action. Some of them are about inaction, about what we don't do, what we avoid, what we delay. And those mistakes can be just as costly. That quiet discomfort did not disappear. It stayed in the background, not loud enough to stop everything, but strong enough to be felt. And slowly, another pattern began to appear, not in what I was doing, but in what I was avoiding. There were things I knew I should look at: numbers, bills, balances, simple things, nothing complicated. But I didn't look. Not fully, not honestly, just quickly, and then away, because looking closely would make things real. And reality felt uncomfortable. So I delayed. I'll check later. I'll fix it next month. It's not that bad. Those thoughts felt harmless, even reasonable. But they created the fourth mistake: avoidance, not action, not decision, just delay. And delay has a quiet cost. Because while you are not looking, things continue. Numbers change, balances grow, consequences build, silently, without asking, without warning. I remember one afternoon, sitting with a bill in my hand. Nothing unusual, just another payment, but something felt different, heavier. So this time, I didn't look away. I stayed, I looked longer, and for the first time, I added everything together. All the small things, all the delayed things, all the ignored things. And suddenly, the full picture appeared, clear, undeniable, uncomfortable. That moment was not dramatic. There was no panic, no shock, just a deep, heavy realization. This was real, and it had been growing for a long time. That is the danger of avoidance. It doesn't create noise, it creates silence. And in that silence, problems grow. After that moment, something changed. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. I started to look more often, not with fear, but with honesty. Numbers became clearer, patterns became visible, and slowly, control began to return. But there was still one more mistake, quieter than the others, less visible, but just as important. It wasn't about spending. It wasn't about investing. It wasn't even about avoidance. It was about something deeper, something simple but often forgotten, the absence of a clear direction. Up to this point, everything had been reactive: spend, fix, lose, adjust, avoid, look again. But there was no real plan, no clear intention, no long-term thinking, just short-term decisions, repeating. And without direction, even small mistakes can lead somewhere far away from where you want to be. That realization was quiet, but powerful, because for the first time, the question was not what went wrong, but where am I actually going? And that question changed everything. That question did not have an immediate answer. And maybe that was the point. For a long time, I had been reacting, fixing problems, avoiding discomfort, chasing quick solutions. But I had never really stopped to choose a direction, not clearly, not intentionally. So instead of rushing to answer, I stayed with the question, quietly. What am I actually trying to build? Not just next month, not just next year, but over time. That shift was subtle, but powerful. Because when you have direction, decisions become easier, not perfect, but clearer and slowly. A different way of thinking began. Less about quick results, more about long-term stability. Less about appearance, more about reality. Less about reacting, more about choosing. That was the beginning of the fifth mistake. Finally becoming visible. Not having a plan, not having clarity, not deciding what truly matters. Because without that, everything feels important. Every opportunity feels urgent. Every desire feels necessary. And that leads to confusion, to scattered decisions, to slow damage over time. So I began, very simply. Not a big plan, not something complicated, just a few clear thoughts. What do I want to feel? Stable, calm, in control. What do I want to avoid? Stress, debt, uncertainty. And from those answers, small decisions started to change. Spending became more intentional, not perfect, but more aware. Investing became slower, more careful, based on understanding, not noise. Avoidance became less frequent. Looking at numbers became normal. Not comfortable at first, but honest. And over time, that honesty created something new. Not excitement, not fast success, but quiet strength. A feeling that things were finally becoming stable. Looking back now, those 5 mistakes were not just financial. They were patterns, ways of thinking, ways of reacting to life, using money I didn't have, following the crowd without understanding, spending to prove something, avoiding reality, living without direction. Each one felt small at the beginning, but together, They nearly created something very heavy, something difficult to escape, and yet they also created something else: awareness, clarity, a different way of seeing things. Because sometimes the deepest lessons don't come from success, they come from slow mistakes, quiet mistakes, the kind that teach you over time. If you are listening to this and something feels familiar, you are not alone. These patterns are more common than we think. And the good news is, they can change slowly, gently, step by step, not by fixing everything at once, but by noticing, by being honest, by choosing a direction. Thank you for staying with this story. If it gave you something to think about, something to reflect on, you can continue this journey. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There will be more quiet stories, more real experiences, and more simple English to help you grow from within. And if you want to learn English better, you can listen again, slowly, one sentence at a time, because real understanding, like real change, takes time. I'll see you in the next story.